sell assets. The purchase of any asset is an open market purchase. The sale of any asset is an open market sale. To see how this process works, let us assume that the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, for some unknown reason, decide to purchase an old debt of mine. Let us say that I agree to sell my debt to the Fed for $100. How does the Fed pay for the debt? It writes a check on itself for $100 and hands me the check in return for the debt, which it carts off to its own office. Where does it get money to pay the check? By this time, the answer should be evident. It creates the money out of thin air. It creates the $100 by writing out a check for that amount. The $100 is a new liability. It creates upon itself out of nothing. This new liability, of course, is solidly grounded on the Fed's unlimited power to engage in legalized counterfeiting. For if someone should demand cash for the $100 liability, the Fed could cheerfully print a new $100 bill and give it to the person redeeming the claim. The Fed then had paid for my debt by writing a check on itself looking for somewhat as follows. Federal Reserve Bank of New York. There is only one thing I can do with this check. I cannot deposit or cash it at the Fed, because the Fed take only deposit accounts of banks, not individuals. The only thing I can do is deposit it at a commercial bank. Suppose I deposit in my account at Citibank. In that case, I now have an increase of $100 in my demand deposit account at Citibank. The bank in turn have a $100 check on the Fed. The bank reads the check with enthusiasm, for it now can rush down to the Fed and deposit the check, thereby obtaining an increase in its reserves of the Fed of $100. Figure 10.7 shows what will happen as a result of the Fed's purchase of my debt. The key monetary part of the transaction was not the debt, which goes to grace the increased furniture asset column of the Fed ledger, but that the Fed has written a check upon itself. It can use the check only by depositing it in a bank, and as soon as I do so, my own money supply in the form of demand deposits goes up by $100. More important, my bank now deposits the check on the Fed at that institution, and its total reserves also go up by $100. The money supply had gone up by $100, but the key point is that reserves have gone up by the same amount, so that the banking system will, over a few months, pyramid more loans and demand deposits on top of the new reserves, depending on the required reserve ratio, and hence the money multiplier. Note that bank reserves have increased by the same amount as the Fed's open market purchase of the debt. Open market purchases are a factor of increase of bank reserves, and in practice by far the most important such factor. An open market sale has precisely the reverse effect. Suppose that the Fed decides to auction off some old furniture and they buy one of its debts for $100. Suppose too that I pay for the sale with a check to the Fed on my bank, say Citibank. In this case, As we see in figure 10.8, my own money stock of demand deposit is decreased by $100, in return for which I receive a desk. More important, Citibank had to pay the Fed $100 as its reasons the check. Citibank pays for it by seeing its reserve account of the Fed draw down by $100. Multiplier of bank loans and deposits, enhanced of the total money supply. Therefore, if often market purchases of assets by the Fed are a factor of increase of reserve by the same amount, the other side of the coin is that open market sales of assets are a factor of decrease. From the point of view of the money supply, it doesn't make any difference what asset the Fed buys. The only thing that matters is the Fed's writing of the check, or someone writing the Fed a check. And indeed, under the Monetary Control Act of 1980, the Fed now has unlimited power to buy any asset it wishes and up to any amount, whether it be corporate stock, bonds, or foreign currency. But until now, virtually, the only asset a Fed has systematically bought and sold have been U.S. government securities. Every week, the system manager buys or sells U.S. government securities from on to a handful of top private dealers in government securities. The system manager acts under the orders of the Fed's Federal Open Market Committee, which meets every month to issue directives for the month. The Fed system manager mostly buys, but also sells an enormous amount, and every year the accumulated purchases of U.S. Treasury bills and bonds dry up bank reserves by the same amount, and thereby act to fix total reserve wherever the Fed wishes, and hence to determine the total money supply issued by the banks. One reason for selecting government bonds as the major asset is what it is by far the biggest and most liquid capital market in the country. There is never any problem of illiquidity or problem of making a purchase or sale in the government securities market. How Fed open market purchasing have been the driving force of monetary expansion may be quickly seen by noting that the Fed asset of U.S. government securities, totaling $128 billion in January 1982, were by far the bulk of its total assets. Moreover, this figure contrasts with $62 billion owned in 1970 and $27 billion owned in 1960. This is roughly a 17% annual increase in U.S. government securities owned by the Fed over the past 2 decades. There is no need to worry about the ever-shifting definition of money, the ever greater numbers of myths. All that need be done to stop inflation in its tracks forever is to pass a law ordering the Fed never to buy any more assets ever again. Repeatedly, governments have distracted attention from their own guide for inflation and scapegoated various groups and institutions on the market. Repeatedly, they have tried and failed to combat inflation by freezing wages and prices equivalent to holding down the mercury column of a thermometer by brute force in order to cure a fever. But all that needs to be done is one freeze that governments have never agreed to, freezing the central bank. Better to abolish central banking altogether. But if that cannot be accomplished, then as a transitional step, the central bank should be frozen and prevented from making further loans or especially open market purchases. Period. Let us see how a government bond purchased by the Fed on the open market increases reserves by the same amount. Suppose that the Fed system manager buys $1 million of government bonds from private bond dealers. In figure 10.9, we saw the system manager's purchase of $1 million in government bonds from the securities dealer firm of Jones and Co. The Fed pays for the bond by writing a check for $1 million upon itself. Its assets increased by $1 million, balanced by its liabilities of newly created deposit money consisting of a check upon itself. Jones and Co. have only one option: to deposit the check in a commercial bank. If it deposits the check at Citibank, it now has an increase of its own money supply of $1 million. Citibank then takes the check to the Fed, deposits it there, and in turn acquires a new reserve of $1 million, upon which the banking system pyramids reserve in accordance with the money multiplier. Thus, a Fed purchase of a $1 million bond from a private bond dealer had resulted in an increase of total bank reserves of $1 million, upon which the bank can pyramid loans and demand deposits. If the Fed should buy bonds from commercial banks directly, the increase in total reserves will be the same. Thus, suppose, as in figure 10.10, the Fed buys a $1 million government bond from Citibank. In that case, the reserves for both are as shown in figure 10.10. Here, when the Fed purchases a bond directly from a bank, there is no initial increase in demand deposits or in total bank assets or liabilities. But the key point is that Citibank's reserves have once again increased by $1 million of the Fed's open market purchase, and the banking system can readily pyramid a multiple amount of loans and deposits on top of the new reserves. Thus, the factors of increase of total bank reserves determined by Federal Reserve policy are open market purchasing and loans to banks, of which the former are far more important. The public, by increasing its demand for cash, can reduce bank reserves by the same amount, 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 by the same amount.